Hello, welcome to another episode of The Brent Show. Are you there, sir?
This is the criminal.
There you go. How you doing, man?
Well, I'm hanging in there. There's some stuff going on in my life that I might discuss with you, but I don't want you to put it on the air. Well, one thing that you can put on the air is I run into people, especially younger people, that go and they take their insecurities and they put them on Facebook. Facebook is the only social media that I really use. I mean, I'm concerned about my privacy and how, and all the stuff, my personal information that's being taken. But I find it's a good way to stay in touch with people that I already know, and it's a good way. And I met you on Facebook. It's a good way to get in touch with people who I know who I am. It's a good way to get in touch with women who I think are pretty, and so I use it for those reasons. But some people use it because, hi, this is what I had for lunch today, and I want to post a picture. I don't care. Hi, I'm miserable. I don't like myself. This sucks. This person is mean to me, and I'm upset, and I'm really depressed, and this is unfair. I don't think that people should post their insecurities on Facebook. I don't think it's a good look. I think that that's something you tell people in private. And so if there are things that are not going on in my life, not going well, I don't think that I want them on YouTube. I don't think it's a good idea. Now, Ric Flair, when he wrote his first book, he wrote about all the times he cheated on Beth. And he said, I feel terrible about this. And he wrote in detail about all the things he did. He says, I feel terrible about this. I'm going to spend the rest of my life being devoted to Beth and being a better husband. And Beth's reaction was she read the book. She did not know all the things that he did. And she was so angry that she immediately filed for divorce. And he did not have a chance to spend the rest of his life being devoted to her because she was upset over what he did, and so this backfired on him, dishonesty. So, was it a good idea for him to put that in the book? Probably not. Did it sell more copies? Yeah. But, if I write a book, which we've discussed, should I put things in there that I'm ashamed of? Is it a good idea? I think not. You understand?
Well, I think that you're probably ashamed of things that you shouldn't be ashamed of.
Should Ric Flair have been ashamed for all the times he cheated on Beth? Did he hurt Ashley? Did he hurt Reed? How do you think that Ashley and Reed felt reading about all that?
I mean, I
might have thought it was funny, but I doubt Ashley and Reed thought it was very funny. We know Beth didn't think it was funny.
Well, first of all, before going public with a book like that, he should have talked with his wife and told her directly, for sure. Because why would you write a book that's going to be public unless you ready your wife for it? That seems kind of odd, don't you think?
Agreed.
So, I mean,
did you read the latest book that he co-wrote with Ashley?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Did you read his most recent book that he co-wrote with Ashley? He had his half, and she had her half, and oftentimes they told the same story from different perspectives. And one of the stories was about how he ended up leaving Beth. Did you read that book?
No, I've never read any Ric Flair book.
Well, it was very, very good. Ashley basically found out that there was a trainer that he had named Tiffany, and Rick was cheating on her mother, Beth, with Tiffany. And this was not just a purely sexual affair. This was something where there were emotions involved. And so she was really, really upset and didn't want to speak to her father. And she was in high school at the time, and so maybe even middle school, I'm not sure. So she was really, really upset. Her father came home and told her he was very sorry, and things were fine for a while. And so she sort of forgot about Tiffany. somebody brought up Tiffany, and she was traumatized, but she just kind of went out of her mind. And then a few years later, Rick just disappears, and then he shows up, and he says, "Hey, listen, I'm with Tiffany. Our marriage is over." And so she was really, really upset with her father. And so, and so then Rick ended up marrying Tiffany, the trainer, and it ended up being a disaster, as all of Rick's marriages are. Until finally, if you've taken a look at, at Fifi the maid, Wendy Barlow, she does not look like she did when she was Fifi the maid. She's in her mid-50s. She's not that great looking anymore. She's looking fine for her mid-50s, but, Flair would date women in their 30s. And so but she was there for him when he almost died. It seems that he's finally learned his lesson, and maybe he's grown up a little bit. I suspect that this marriage will probably work. I mean, he's nearly 80 years old, and maybe a woman in her 50s at this point is more appropriate for him.
Yeah, he doesn't look too good. I think Hogan looks better.
No,
than
he doesn't, and she clearly loves him. She was there in the hospital when he almost died, along with Megan and with David and with Ashley.
Yeah. So, how many wives has Rick had? Only 2?
I think 5. Mm-hmm.
Oh. So his
first
one that
2. Let's see. He married Leslie, who's Jewish, in 1972. I think I read today. And they got divorced in 1981, I think, or 82. And then he went and married Beth immediately. He was already cheating on Beth when he was with Leslie. It says in the book, Rick would go home and spend time with Leslie and with David and with what's the first daughter, Megan. And Megan ended up marrying Conrad Thompson a couple years ago. Megan has been divorced a few times too. I don't know what it is with that family, but anyway, so he would go home and visit his family. It's like, I gotta get out of here. I'm bored. And then he would go and he would visit Beth. So he was already cheating on Leslie with Beth, and then he ended up marrying Beth, and they were married for about 10 years. And then shortly after the book came out, they got divorced. And then he married Wendy Beams, and she was a nut, and they had domestic violence, mostly her against him. And then the cops would show up, and she would mark up her face, like retarded blading. So she would mark up her face and say, "Look what Rick did to me." This woman was a nut, and so they got divorced. No, first there was a trainer, After Beth, there was a trainer, Tiffany. Then there was Wendy Beams, and now there's Wendy Barlow. No, okay. Jackie Beams, and then Wendy Barlow. And Wendy Barlow is Fifi the maid, who you remember from the Flair from the Gold segments, and she doesn't look like Fifi the maid anymore. I think that this one's actually pretty serious because every woman that Flair would date was pretty darn good looking.
Yeah, but I never thought any of his offspring were that good looking. What do you think?
Well, I think that Ashley's very good looking. I thought that Reed was a good looking guy. It's a shame that he let drugs destroy him. His father never understood it. His father's like,
Ashley's Charlotte,
I drank.
Right? Ashley's Charlotte.
Yeah,
right?
Ashley's Charlotte. Yes.
Okay.
Flair's like, oh, I know, I drank like a fish. I might have smoked a little pot, but he had no understanding at all of heroin. He has no understanding of how his son could do that. And then eventually his son died, and it devastated the whole family. And so Reed was good looking. David, if you remember him in WCW, he was a good looking guy, and then he got to be really fat, and he grew a beard, and he doesn't wrestle anymore at all. And I don't think he's that good looking anymore. I don't think his wife cares. And then I think that Megan's a little heavy, but her husband Conrad Thompson is a lot heavier. I don't think Megan cares, and I think that Conrad's thrilled to be married to Ric Flair's daughter, as Conrad has been a Ric Flair fan for decades. He grew up in the South. Everybody in the South is a Ric Flair fan.
What do you think Flair
everybody
thinks
who followed wrestling was.
Of Charlotte's fiancé?
Well, I was just laughing about it because he just got suspended for the wellness policy. I don't know if it was steroids or drugs. If it was drugs, you think she's like, my brother died from this crap. I don't want you doing this.
It's a bad look.
If it was steroids. He's like, my brother, I have a tattoo on him. You remember reading his favorite Bible quote, his favorite song. I'm a wrestler because of him. How could you do this? Or if it's steroids, he's like, well, my dad took steroids a little bit, but he really didn't need them. He quit. He didn't do them for long because he realized he could be totally over without them. You don't need to do freaking steroids. And then the guy before that was a wrestler. I don't know what happened. And then she wrote in the book about her first boyfriend when I think she might have been a physical trainer, or I'm not sure what she was doing at the time. She dropped out of college for the guy. She quit volleyball because of the guy. He was physically abusive to her. And so clearly her and her father don't really have an idea as to who's a good match. And clearly Ashley has no idea what a good man is. And so I think it's funny that Rick has been through 5 wives, but his first 2 wives were like 25 years combined. And Ashley's what, like 32 years old, and she's already on her third fiance. It's 2 marriages and third guy's a fiance. I mean, this is not a good track record for that family.
Who was she married to before?
Well, she was married to the guy that beat her. That's in the book. And then I think she was married to a wrestler after that, and they got divorced.
Someone beat up Charlotte? My God.
Yeah. Yeah, this is in the book. She wrote about it. He sued.
Oh, man. So he
Do you think she was
up.
lying? Somehow I don't.
No.
I think she was probably telling the truth.
Yeah. She's a tough girl, though. I mean, I wouldn't want to get into a fight
I know,
with her.
but she might have been a personal trainer at the time, but she might have just been a college dropout who was on the volleyball team. I can't remember the timeline. Right before she got hired as a wrestler, she was a personal trainer. She had no desire to be a wrestler. She just went to the Hall of Fame, and her brother says, well, I want to be a wrestler. You should too. And she's saying, well, I'll talk about it. So they talked to Michael Hayes or Jerry Briscoe or whoever it was, and, okay, I'll try it. She did it for her brother.
She turned out to be good.
Be a wrestler.
She turned out to be very good,
yeah,
though.
she turned out to be great. But it took time because the athletic thing she was great at, but the charisma she was not great at. That's why she stayed in NXT so long, and she had no charisma. She had no self-confidence. And so that's what she had to work on. Yeah,
she didn't. Her father was a natural. She was not in terms of that department.
Right, in terms of athletics, she was a natural.
I think she's a natural at athletics. I mean, her father was a natural talker.
Yes.
And
I think her father was a great athlete too. I mean, he was not a great wrestler. He knew that if you stuck him in the ring with Bob Backlund could do anything he wanted to him, and he did go in the ring with Backlund. But Backlund wasn't going to shoot on him. Backlund was a professional.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, he knew that Bob Backlund could just destroy him if he wanted.
That said, a lot of people did try to pin Flair, double-cross Flair. That was a thing.
I hadn't heard that because Flair is not somebody who could take care of himself, nor was Dusty. Now, Harley Race could take care of himself, and so could Jack Briscoe, and so could Dory Funk, and so could Terry Funk. But Dusty and Flair, no, they were performers.
No, but Harley Race was basically Flair's bodyguard.
That's correct.
And so anytime anyone
they would send
Flair,
Harley to Japan if there was any funny business. Harley could prevent it from happening.
He would beat up other wrestlers if they shot on Flair. So maybe they were scared of Harley. But you have to have somebody in your corner if you're not going to fight yourself.
Well, Flair was real happy to have Harley in his corner.
That's a pretty nice guy.
He could have used Harley in his corner when he went to Puerto. I can't remember. I think it might have been Puerto Rico. But he was really afraid, and so he tells the promoter who's also the champion that was it Victor Jovica? I can't remember. He said, I'm going to drop the belt to you because they're going to riot if I don't. and so he just lost the belt. And then I think that he just took it back with them, and so they never saw him win the belt back because they would have rioted. It was so freaking dangerous. He could have used Harley in that situation.
I think Harley would have been overwhelmed.
Flair just lost. He lost the freaking belt, and he never officially won it back. I don't think. But it was never on TV, so they just pretended it never happened. He's like,
right.
I can't win. They'll kill me on the way out. You know, if that was
right.
Terry Funk, he could have taken care of himself.
Well, Terry Funk would have got mauled too. But he could have
taken care of himself. And when Harley would when Terry Funk would talk about it, the fans would stab him. He's like, hey, that means I'm over.
That sucks.
The reason why Jim Cornette had a loaded tennis racket was it really was a loaded tennis racket, and he would hit the fans with it if he had to. Did you know that?
Yeah, I know.
That tennis racket really was loaded with a chain.
That's the thing.
Because old pudgy Jim Cornette could definitely not take care of himself. He was a young 23-year-old, and in these places in Louisiana, they wanted to kill him. You would go out there with the Midnight Express and run to the car as fast as he could to get out of there.
Remember when they broke Ricky Morton's nose? That was a big thing. They hated him for that.
Well, I'm sure.
Shit.
Was this on TBS or was this in the territories?
Both, right? I mean, I saw it on TBS.
I don't remember. I didn't start. I've seen a lot of tapes of stuff, and I've seen a lot of interviews, but I didn't start watching TBS until like 19. Well, the first major angle I remember watching was the I Quit match with Flair and with Terry Funk, and then I remember the Clash of the Champions. I think it was Clash of the Champions, or maybe it was a pay-per-view that they played the replay on TBS where he had a match against Steamboat and Funk was doing commentary, and then he put Flair to the table. That's about when I first started watching. And the end of '88 is when Turner took over from Jim Crockett. I remember I would watch the intro to the syndicated shows like WCW Pro or WCW Worldwide, and they always, like in the intro, they always had the NWA logo, and then they took the NWA logo away, and I knew something was different. So I was watching right at the end of Jim Crockett Promotions, right when Turner bought it.
Yeah, I mean, so you were watching it during before
88,
Nitro.
89.
Yeah, like way before Nitro.
Oh yeah, I was watching Nitro. I remember the very first Nitro. I remember I was just as stunned as everyone else when Lex Luger walked out there, as he'd done a house show with WWF the night before.
I know. And it was taped.
Vince was stunned, and he wasn't under contract. And so Vince eventually learned, gee, I better not have guys under contract wrestling on shows and wrestling on TV.
You know what? He just got blindsided by that whole thing, and the reason why wrestling is so shitty now is because he is never recovered from that experience. So,
could be. Really, he was pretty upset because Raw wasn't on that night. He flips on Nitro, and there's Luke. Can you imagine Vince at home in Stamford watching that? He must have kicked his foot through the television.
Well, he trashed Luger
Vince
anyway.
Has a temper.
He did the ultimate. He did the worst job with Luger, and he made Luger into a joke after he didn't beat Yokozuna. After the Luger tour. Remember that?
The Lex Express tour apparently was not very successful. I mean, Lex says, "Oh, I liked it. I had a great time on that tour. Oh, Vince was great to me." Because Lex is a Christian now, and he never has anything bad to say about Vince. He says everything he did was fine. I don't care if I wasn't champion. He never says anything bad about Vince now. But other people say that Lex was not a natural face, that he was not genuine on that tour, that he did not really enjoy meeting the fans, and the tour was a disaster because people could see that it was all fake, that Lex was not really into it, that it was so the tour was a failure, and so Vince decided to not put the belt on him then. The first of the excuses, well, we're going to wait till WrestleMania, and then it was, he's just not over. The fans just aren't buying it. The fans could see through that it was just a character and it wasn't real, and he really didn't like them that much.
But what's crazy is that he was a huge babyface with Ric Flair. I mean, when he was fighting Ric Flair, he was like white hot. So why couldn't they just use that?
Well, Flair could get anyone over as a babyface.
I guess, but I mean, I think if they
I agree. When I've seen tapes when he was a heel as a member of the Horsemen, replacing Barry Windham, and he seemed to be over then, and he technically replaced Ole, I think, and then I think he replaced Ole, and then Windham replaced Luger. Yeah, I remember in WCW he was not a good worker, but yeah, he was over. I agree.
Especially in the during Nitro, when he finally, I think he got over his biggest during the Nitro era, when he went up against Hogan.
Oh, I remember he was pretty over in the '80s, but yeah, I remember when they gave him the belt, they poured champagne on him, which reminded me a lot of when Hogan won the belt in '84. Yeah,
totally.
He seemed to be pretty over then.
I think he should have jumped back to Vince. He probably would have been used better. But
I wonder whether it's intentional. You know, Vince gets Terry and Dory Funk. He says, "You can't call a man Dory. Dory's a woman's name. We're going to call him Haas." You know, and then he gets Dusty and he says, "I see polka dots." You know, he gets Flair and he puts him in the Survivor Series, and he gets Barry Windham and he makes him into the Widowmaker. At least Arn and Tully he didn't do anything with. He didn't change them at all.
He didn't.
But generally, he had to go and put his twist on everyone. It was not about getting them over. It was not about making money with them. It was about putting them through the machine and seeing whether they could get over.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do anything to Ric
Flair.
Now,
how Arn and Tully didn't go through the machine, I don't know. Arn's talked about it. He says, "Hey, Vince said don't change at all." You know, but then he went to them and he says, "Well, you promised that we'd be making more money. We're not. Let us go back." So Flair says, "So Vince is fine. I gave you my word that you'd make more money. You could go back." And then after he said you could go back, then they finally got what Vince promised them. Because Vince wanted to show them, "Listen, I can do what I want whenever I want. So now that you're leaving anyway, now you'll get the money I promised you."
Really? That's what he did, huh?
Yeah, apparently. The timing might be a little bit off, but yeah, once they had pretty much already decided that they were leaving, then Vince finally kept his promise of paying them more than they ever made at Crockett. So basically, Arn felt that as soon as they agreed to stay, their pay would go down again because it was just Vince manipulating them.
Damn.
And then what happened is that Tully was on drugs, and so he never went back, and that was the end of his career. He never went back to WCW because he was on drugs, which is ironic. That would never happen today. Yeah, that was the end of his career.
So when Arn Anderson and him came to the World Wrestling Federation and were the Brain Busters, did they went up against the Rockers, right?
Yeah, they did. They went up against a lot of teams. They had the titles for a while, and I think they lost them to Demolition, if I'm not mistaken. The Rockers never won the tag titles, but yeah, they were there a year.
But they were never there with Flair.
They were featured prominently, and they didn't have to change their gimmick. But the only thing they did was stick them with Bobby Heenan, which they both loved. Everyone wanted to be with Heenan.
They weren't there with Flair, though.
Flair
was there.
No, Flair came later.
Flair had left already. Okay.
No, I think that Arn and Tully went back, and shortly after that, Flair left. Well, Tully never went back. That was the end of Tully's career because of the drugs. But yeah, Arn went back, and then I think shortly after that, Flair left.
Is the four? Are the
and
four
Flair was Flair had an agreement with Vince because they were about the same age. Vince says, hey, listen, if you're not happy here, you just let me know whenever you're not happy, and you're free to go. And so, so what happened is Flair was kind of moved out of the main event. He was kind of moved a little lower down the card, and he says, I want to go. And so Vince says, okay, fine. You're going to have a feud with Kurt Hennig. It'll be brief. You're going to lose a loser leaves town match. We'll put this on the, we'll have the setup on the first Monday Night Raw, and then we'll have the second Monday Night Raw is going to be taped, and that's where you're going to lose the loser leaves town match. We're all going to tape it one night, and that's it. You're done. Flair says, okay, deal. And then he goes, and Ole Anderson is briefly in charge of WCW. He says, what do I want you for? You just lost a loser leaves town match to Kurt Hennig on national TV. We don't have any use for you. And so Ole got fired after that, and Bischoff brought him
in. always hated Flair for some reason. Why is that? You know?
I don't know. Maybe it's because Flair's not a legit tough guy, and Ole is. Maybe it's jealousy. Well, my favorite Ole story, and I actually have some sympathy for Ole on this, is that when the TBS time slot, and these stories are just stuff that I see on YouTube. Some of it is repeating stories that Meltzer's told, and Meltzer can tell these stories a lot better than me. And I'm probably screwing some details up that Meltzer would know, or I'm screwing, I'm watching YouTube interviews about the wrestlers talking about this directly, and so you can catch this stuff on YouTube, and they can tell these stories more accurately than me. But from what my understanding, Jim Barnett, the Briscoes, and there were a couple of minority owners that owned Georgia Championship Wrestling, which was on TBS, and Georgia Championship Wrestling, later World Championship Wrestling, was a television show. And all the wrestlers wanted to be on it. But they only had shows in Georgia. They never had it outside the state of Georgia, and it was on national TV, but all the commercials were for businesses in Georgia. And so all the other NWA promoters didn't care because, well, he's not really a national promotion. He's not promoting outside of Georgia. The television goes nationwide or worldwide, wherever you get it on satellite. But, it's Georgia businesses, Georgia shows. They don't really care. But all the wrestlers wanted to be on it because it was still national exposure. And so Flair was working for Crockett in Carolina, but he always wanted to go to Atlanta for TV. All the wrestlers did. So anyway, Vince saw this was a national time slot. And so he goes to Jim Barnett, my boy, and he goes to, Jim Barnett was a well-known homosexual. The wrestlers knew it. Everybody knew it. But, and he's also Jewish, and so he's like, well, gee, I can be in the NWA as a Jew, and I can be in the NWA as gay, but I can't be in the NWA as a Jewish gay man. So, I think that he, I think that he picked up the Jewish thing secret, if I can recall. But anyway, so Jim Barnett owned some of the stock, and the Briscoes owned some of the stock, and then there were some minority owners. And so Vince brought out all the owners except for Ole. But Ole was stuck below 50% of ownership at that point. And so he goes and Vince offers Barnett a job. He offers the Briscoes a job. So, so the Briscoes go on the road, and, they had like 3 shows a day. There was an A show, a B show, and a C show. So they were working like 6-7 days a week. So he did this for 9 months, and finally Jack says, I quit. And then Jerry, shortly after that, just starts working in the office because he didn't want to deal with the grind of the road. And so, Vince had paid him enough money, and they were done. They'd been in wrestling for 30 years. So, Jerry had owned part of his own promotion. So, anyway, Barnett goes and works for Vince for a while. Then he goes back to Turner, and then he goes back to Vince. Barnett was very political. So then the minority owners, Vince also bought out, and so Ole was the only owner left. And he says, Ole, Vince McMahon, we'd like to buy your stock. And he says, well, F you, Vince. So Vince walks out, sees him later. I think it might have been a courtroom, if I recall. And he says, hi, I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Linda. Well, F you and F your wife, too. So That's why Ole never went in the Hall of Fame. Because Vince offered in the Hall of Fame years later. He said, I don't want to go in the Hall of Fame.
God, what a dick.
Still bitter.
Man. And
that was Ole. Alan Rogowski.
Did he make a lot of money in wrestling?
Well, I think that if he took Vince's offer, he would have been just fine, but he never took Vince's offer. So, yeah, I think that, he went to work for Croc. Vince having that time slot on TBS was a disaster. They had Black Saturday, where all of a sudden Vince is on TV, and where's Gordon Soley's wrestling, and the fans are upset. So he did that for a year, and then he sold the time slot to Crockett, and Ole had a show on in the morning, I think it was. No, Ole had a show on, and then Crockett got his time slot, so he went to work for Crockett, and then he worked for a while for Turner. He did some booking. He wrestled on occasion. So I don't think that Ole had a lot of money at the time that Vince got the time slot and got his promotion because he was still working for years later. I don't know. He might be doing okay now. You see his interviews. He's dressed like a slob, but maybe Ole just doesn't care about that. I don't know. Ole's in a wheelchair. Kind of feel bad for the bitter old man, even though the word was that he would use the N-word a lot. So there's word he was a racist, but in some ways you feel bad for the guy. He's just a bitter old man.
Are they in the
Apparently
Hall of Fame?
Apparently he has Alzheimer's. What?
Are they in the Hall of Fame?
The Horsemen are, not Ole. He didn't want to go in.
No, I'm talking the Observer.
Oh, yes. Flair is. Sure Arn is. Tully, I'm not sure. Barry Windham, probably. His father, Blackjack Mulligan, yeah. Luger, I'm not sure.
Barry Windham's.
Ole, no. Ole and Meltzer had a big argument over whether he should be in the Observer Hall of Fame. This is famous. They were like going at it for like an hour. You can find this on YouTube. So he hates Meltzer because he's not in the Hall of Fame, the Observer Hall of Fame. He cares about that. He wants to be in the Observer Hall of Fame, the WWF Hall of Fame. He has no interest in.
Do you think he deserves to be in the Observer Hall of Fame?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Well, he was a promoter out of Georgia. He was a big star. Even working for Crockett at the very end of his career, he was a member of the Horsemen. He was a big star. I think that he made a large enough footprint where where he deserved it. I mean, even Vince had enough respect for him where he was going to shake his hand, buy his stock, and offer him a job.
I see. So, but I just don't see him as that big of a name in the business. But
well, how long have you been following wrestling?
I didn't follow it. I started following it like the mid '80s. So I don't.
Yeah, well, about the same time as me. But when I first started following it, he was a member of the Horsemen, so he seemed like a big deal. And that was just at the very tail end of his career.
Yeah, that was.
If nothing else, you should be in the Hall of Fame for getting the Black Scorpion over.
He should, yes. Well, he should be in the
Remember
Hall
the Black Scorpion gimmick?
There should be a stable
Sting!
Category.
Sting! Yeah, that was the voice of Ole. And also, you know who else the voice of Ole was? The Shockmaster was also the voice of Ole. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So the Shockmaster, who was the Shockmaster again?
Fred Ottman. Tugboat, Typhoon.
Oh, Typhoon. Oh, okay.
Yes.
And who was the Mummy?
And that was also Dusty Rhodes' brother-in-law. And so apparently little Cody was watching, and he said, "That's Uncle Fred! That's Uncle Fred!" And Dusty says, "That was Uncle Fred." And so the reason why he tripped is apparently Dusty had set up a 2x4 purposely for him to trip over because Dusty thought it would be funny.
No, he killed the gimmick.
Apparently so. Apparently, no. It was designed to be a serious thing, but
So that
I
makes
think
no
Fred
sense. Why
told
would
the
you
story that
sabotage
Dusty had purposely set up the 2x4 for the live show, which wasn't there before, in order for him to trip because Dusty thought it would be funny. Dusty was the booker.
Well, he just shot himself in the foot with that, because that could have been a big gimmick. I mean, it was like the glacier. Remember that?
Yeah, it was supposed to be taken seriously. But then, the stormtrooper helmet fell off. But I don't know. Could you take it seriously when he has a stormtrooper helmet with glitter on it?
You remember Glacier?
Yeah, that was not very over either.
No. It was ridiculous.
They put a lot of money in that, however.
It's like he had he kept doing these vignettes where he would put on some armor or something. I don't know. He was kicking.
Yes.
Yes. But what people should have realized,
and they might have spent as much on that ring entrance as Ben spent on Goldust's early ring entrance.
So, don't you think that Hogan ruined WCW just by refusing to let anyone be on top except him? I mean,
it
really
certainly made me very angry at the time. But when he was a babyface and he was getting 1.5%, maybe he was getting more than that. I think he was getting 10% of the pay-per-view revenue. It worked for a while. And then people got tired of him feuding with the same wrestlers that he'd already beaten in WWF and just rehashing those old feuds. People got tired of that after a while. And so then Kevin Sullivan says, don't worry, we could get that over again. And so he comes up with the Dungeon of Doom gimmick in order to rebuild his confidence. And then people got tired of that. So eventually it's proposed that he go heel. And so he doesn't want to go heel because he says, I made so much merchandise as a face. It's my whole gimmick. And so he has to spend the night at Kevin Sullivan's house, who's the booker, and he stays with Sullivan, and Sullivan spends a whole day. So obviously that worked.
Oh, it was a tremendous success.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like watching any of it, but I was not a fan of Hogan at the time, but as a face or as a heel, but it was effective. They certainly made a lot of money during that time period.
I'm sure you liked that, at least the night of the turn. You thought it was cool, right?
I wasn't real thrilled with it because that was a gimmick that Hall and Nash already had over. He's like, I want part of that. I can make money at that. Remember when chair shots were real big, and Hogan was never one that did a lot of chair shots, but he was like, monkey see, monkey do, and so he started doing a lot of chair shots because this gets people over. He would do anything to get himself over.
Yeah, but see, he wouldn't let people like Sting, like Luger, like even Savage really get over there.
And Bret Hart he was really afraid of. He did not want Bret getting over. He didn't want Flair getting over. Yeah, well, that's true. He would prevent people from getting over, but for a long time, it worked. They were still making money. I think that it wasn't. I think that under Bischoff's leadership, things got stale, and then they. And then they brought in briefly Bill Bush when they fired Bischoff, and Kevin Sullivan was the booker, and whatever his personal issues were with Benoit, he never brought it to work, and so he was going to make Benoit champion, and he did. And he gives Benoit the belt. Benoit says, I don't care, I'm still leaving. So he walks out with Malenko, and he walks out with, I think Benoit was really unfair to Sullivan. I mean, Sullivan could have held a lot of bitterness against him for taking his wife, but he didn't. And so, he walks out with Malenko and walks out with Eddie Guerrero, and the guys that Nash would call the vanilla midgets were all gone, and that didn't help. And then Bill Bush didn't last long, and they brought back Bischoff, and they brought back Vince Russo, and they had completely different philosophies on the direction of the company, so they didn't get along at all. And then Bischoff basically left again, and Russo drove the thing into the ground, and then they got rid of Russo, and by that point, it was beyond repair.
Wow, you just gave a synopsis of the death of WCW in maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, I suggest Brian Alvarez's expanded Death of WCW if you want a lot more detail.
Oh, did you check out the expansions?
Yeah, I have that book. I read it.
And so tell me about your experience going to Raw.
I went there in Everett. It was easy to get there. They did not mention Everett, Washington, which makes me angry. They have nothing to be ashamed of. They could even say, if they wanted, if they're insecure, hey, we just want to let you know that Key Arena is being renovated, and it's a shell of itself. It's literally a shell. It doesn't exist right now. There is no arena that we could go to in Seattle, so we're a little bit up north in Everett, Washington, and we'd like to thank the great fans of Everett for coming out here. Could have said that, but instead they just said from the state of Washington, as they're ashamed to mention the name Everett, when they have no reason to be ashamed. They couldn't have had the show in Seattle unless it was at the University of Washington, and the University of Washington has never let them use that campus. You know, they could have been in the 10,000-seat basketball arena, you know, but they have doors. I don't think it's possible for them to get all the equipment in there anyway. They've never had a show at the University of Washington, any pro wrestling show that I can recall. But anyway, you know, they couldn't really be in Seattle. There's no suitable place. So they had a show in Everett, and the place seats 8,000 for hockey. I would imagine that they made about 4,000 or 5,000 seats available, and pretty much every one of them was sold. They had a few empty seats on the floor. I went there because I was hoping I would run into people I knew. Brian was there. I didn't see him. I'm not sure if Vinny was there. I didn't see anyone I knew, but I went there because I wanted to see people I knew. I wanted to connect socially, and that was a failure. But I only paid $23 per ticket. I didn't sit in my seat the whole time. I moved down. I sat in the better seats, and I just moved around whenever anyone wasn't sitting somewhere. You know, I was kind of like an unauthorized seat filler. But seat fillers are for people that they're for the seats that are on camera. But anyway, yeah, for $23, it was worth it. I don't think it was a very good show, but I enjoyed watching. I was yelling, Ashley, Ashley, when Charlotte Flair was doing her promo, and I liked seeing Becky Lynch, and I got there late, so I missed the big angle with Orton and Matt Hardy, but I saw the replay of that. He didn't really hit him on the head with the chair, did they? Because they basically told the wrestlers not to do that anymore because of concussions. He didn't really hit him on the head, right? It made him look like they hit him on the head, right?
Yeah.
He pulled back, didn't he?
Yeah. He did.
I was just checking, because if they actually hit him on the head, that's really irresponsible with the concussions now.
Yeah, I don't think...
I mean, back when they were doing that, they didn't understand the long-term ramifications of that.
So Matt Hardy's going to AEW, I heard.
Yeah. So was that like a blow-off angle?
Yeah, they're writing him off the show.
That's interesting.
His contract, he didn't renew. So
I didn't know that.
If he's gonna, I think, head the Dark Order as Broken Matt Hardy in AEW.
Well, but isn't Broken Matt Hardy, isn't that copyrighted by Impact?
No, he can use it because actually he has to call it something.
They called him Woken Matt Hardy in WWE because they couldn't use the Broken Matt Hardy, I think, because Impact wouldn't let him use it.
Well, actually, now they had an agreement that because Impact wasn't even going to let him do Woken Matt Hardy because it resembled too much Broken Matt Hardy. But now he'll probably come up with some other name, you know.
He always does. He's great at reinventing himself.
Yeah. So I think.
I mean, I liked when he was doing the Matt Facts. I thought that was amusing.
He'll thrive in AEW. He'll go nowhere in WWE. They treat him like he's Matt
he's
Hardy
old. You know, they'll bury him in the mid card or lower.
Oh, he'll be a jobber.
He's old.
That's it.
Yeah.
He's a jobber.
Well, Shelton Benjamin just re-signed to be a jobber. Pay me, pay me.
I know. It's so sad.
It's all right. I mean, Meltzer was talking about it. He gets a paycheck, and he works backstage mostly. He's happy.
That's boring.
He actually expressed that he wasn't thrilled about how he's being used, but pay me. I mean, isn't that what Al Snow said?
Yeah, but they don't. When you're just that kind of a worker, they don't keep you around that long because you're worth nothing, really. I mean, there's nothing of value.
Well, that's why. That's Mick Foley on the first WWF Superstars of Wrestling taping. He did a job for the Bulldogs, and they really beat him up badly. But he was doing jobs for a while on Superstars, and this aired nationwide because they had gone national by that point, and he had to get off of there because people would just remember Mick Foley the jobber, and so that's why you couldn't be a jobber on national TV that long because it would kill your ability to make money because nobody would take you seriously. They would just see you as a WWF or WCW jobber.
What's weird about Vince is that he's afraid of making stars. He doesn't want to make them too big of stars because then they could go into the movies and not need him anymore, like John Cena, for instance. And The Rock, yeah.
John Cena, didn't John Cena make a movie where he made like $50 million? That's more than he made his entire WWF career, I would think.
Yeah, John Cena's he doesn't need Vince at all. But that's the problem.
No, so Vince is afraid of that.
He's afraid, so anytime he sees somebody getting too over, he tries to fuck with them. So what's he going to do now that...
I don't think he ever messed with Cena, but then Cena got to be too big. So, doesn't need him anymore.
Well, you know what happened? Cena did that rap gimmick, and that got him over huge. And then he stopped being a rapper, but still over.
Yes.
But...
the kids and the women liked him, and a lot of the men hated him. But, didn't matter. He was still making money. He's like, boo me, cheer me, I don't care. He was still on top. I think that was a shoot. He didn't care whether they booed him or not. He was still making money. He just did his deal. It was probably fairly genuine. He probably really did care about the fans. You know who liked him? It was Flair. Flair thought he was great. But he was not... Flair was not a legitimate tough guy. I don't think Cena was a legitimate tough guy. Flair was not a mat wrestler, but Flair could put on a wrestling show, and they would chant at Cena, "You can't wrestle." So I thought it was interesting that Flair was a big fan of his. I don't see why. They don't have much in common.
Well, probably because he...
Or maybe Flair knew where his bread was buttered. I don't know.
I mean, he was a big fan of Triple H, too, wasn't he?
Yes. He told Paul Levesque, leave WCW. They don't appreciate you here. Go and take Vince's offer. My bosses will never let you be anything here. So Paul was very grateful for that.
Well,
Flair was the booker. He's like, hey, I might be the booker, but I really don't have any power.
Yeah. Anyway, so Vince is, I think, he still doesn't have real competition, so it's really not a problem. And I think he's got something.
Oh, well, yeah, because AEW is not getting ratings. They might have that TNT time slot, which is huge, but sometimes they beat NXT, sometimes they don't. They don't beat Raw, they don't beat SmackDown. So, with all the Khan's money and the good TV time slot, and is the booking pretty good too?
Yeah, it's very good, and they got it. They just got renewed.
But maybe Chris Cruz is right. Maybe wrestling is just on the way down. Maybe it's just not popular anymore. Maybe it never will be. Chris Cruz believes that wrestling is dying. Is he right?
Well, the demographics show that it is. But but AEW is attracting new viewers. And so is NXT. So.
Well, you told me last time that they're attracting the viewers that quit watching wrestling in 2001. In other words, 50-year-old men, 60-year-old men.
They are attracting them, but they're attracting new 18 to 25. That's the coveted group.
Yes.
WWE.
Well, yeah, but the ratings are terrible overall. The Khans have a lot of money to burn, and it gives Tony Khan something to do. I mean, I really hope they succeed. I think they're doing everything right. But I guess for a while their Impact was doing everything right. But they were, in the TNA years, they were terrible for so many years, and they had such bad booking, and they had Vince Russo, and they had Dixie Carter, who didn't know what she was doing and didn't know who good people were. She was a fan, but she was like a new fan. She became a fan when she started working in there. She didn't know anything about wrestling, and so she didn't know who to trust. She didn't know who had good ideas. She just knew that she personally liked Vince Russo, and she thought he was doing a good job. But she, and so, the television company says you can't hire Vince Russo, so she hires him secretly to book, and then she's forced to fire him because she thought he was doing a good job. She had no clue, and so they had such bad product for so many years that even when they have a good product, it doesn't matter. I hear the Impact actually does a very nice job now, but it doesn't matter anymore.
Oh yeah, that ship's
Is that
sailed.
true? Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I won't watch it. I just don't.
The last I read is that it's quite good, but it doesn't matter. They're not spending any money on it. They're owned by Anthem, which owns the TV station now. Whatever crap TV station they're on. At least they're not going to lose it because the same company that owns Impact also owns the TV station, so they don't have to worry about that anymore. But, I hear that the things are good. Scott Moore, I think, is the booker again, and I hear it's good, but nobody watches. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're good. And Ring of Honor, I went to that show. I thought they did a decent job, but is Chris Cruz right? Is wrestling dying? One thing that I thought was a huge concern is during the 80s, they had an A show, a B show, and a C show every day, WWF did. And then they had a Raw tour, a SmackDown tour, and an ECW tour not that long ago. Now they had a Raw tour, a SmackDown tour, and an NXT tour. Now, from what I understand, they have the Raw and SmackDown TV tapings. They don't tour anymore. And NXT still tours because those guys need the work because they're still learning the craft, some of them. Or at least they're learning WWE style. But the fact that the house shows aren't drawing to the point where they have to cancel house shows, that's a huge concern because that shows a real lack of interest in the product. It's like, we'll watch it on TV, and we might go to a TV taping in Everett, Washington, and draw 5,000 fans for a TV taping. But if it's a house show and it's not on TV, they don't go. So if the house shows are dying, that might not cost them much money anymore. I read that the reason why they canceled house shows, they're actually losing money on them, which had never happened before. But who cares? Whatever money they make on house shows, it's not a big deal. It's not about the money. It's about an indication that people just don't like the product anymore.
Well,
I think that's more serious than getting rid of Michelle Wilson and George Barrios, the executives, where the stock price basically dropped by half.
Why do you
think it dropped from like 80 to 40 in a week? But the
why do you think they fired them? Who do you think this one?
I think it was just a disagreement as far as the direction with Vince and them. I think that Vince wanted to take the pay-per-views off the network and sell them to somebody else, and George and Michelle thought that was a terrible idea. The latest did it. The last week's edition of The Observer talks about the reasoning, but we don't quite know why. But I think that the bigger concern in those executives is if Raw and SmackDown house shows are basically dead and they don't come back for a while, that's a concern. Not monetarily, but it just shows people don't want to pay for that product unless it's a TV taping. And the whole business used to be built on house shows. TV tapings were just jobber matches to get people to buy tickets to the house show.
I know. The whole business, that's what I mean. The whole business has changed. Now you have to deliver a pay-per-view quality on TV. So, of course, when you go to a house show, you're going to get jobber matches. So why would anyone want to go see that?
Well, I've been to house shows. The matches are actually longer and more competitive than they are on TV because they're trying out stuff. On TV, people don't have any attention span, so every match is 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. The house shows, the matches actually last longer.
Oh, okay, so they're actually better.
Yeah, have you been to a house show for a while? I haven't, but
I've never been to a house show. I was at like.
Oh, well, I would recommend you go. You're living in New York, right?
Yeah, but
so
I mean,
every month they're in. Are they still in Madison Square Garden every month? They used to be for decades.
I don't know if they are. I don't think they are. I think they come
That's
to
sad.
Barclays.
Anyway, whenever they're in Madison Square Garden, is it always a TV taping? I mean, it used to be a TV taping in the sense that it was on MSG Network, but basically there were no real angles that took place outside there because it only aired in New York. It only aired where you could get MSG Network, and so that's not really a TV taping, as it didn't air nationally. Today, now I don't think that their shows air MSG shows. I don't think they've aired on MSG Network for a while. But do they even have house shows in the Garden, or is everything a TV taping there now?
I think they do everything at the Barclays, in Brooklyn.
And is that always a TV taping, or do they have house shows there sometimes?
No, only TV. TV or paper.
So there are no house shows in New York anymore, which is really sad. Because even when the company was based in Connecticut, but the wrestlers would say we're going to New York. They wouldn't say we're going to WWF. They would say we're going to New York, even though it was based in Connecticut. Everyone thought of it as New York, and even Vince McMahon himself, he might live in Stamford. In Greenwich. The corporate headquarters were in Stamford, but New York was always home. He always considered Madison Square Garden. You would always go to the Madison Square Garden shows. If MSG was doing well, then the company was doing well. That was always considered the home arena, even though corporate was not based in the state. So if they're not even having house shows there anymore, that says something.
Well, what's the solution? Is it just going to go the way of roller derby?
Well, that's what Chris Cruz thinks. I don't know at this point. It would have to be concerned that if AEW is putting on a good product and so few people are watching, or maybe it's just that there's so much to watch on TV these days. There are people that are not watching TV at all, that are getting everything on the Internet, and there's so many channels out there for those that are left watching on TV. It's so fragmented. Nothing's even going to get a 1.0 anymore, or very few things. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just that things are so fragmented these days. I don't know. I would imagine. I would think that as long as the TV companies can make money off of wrestling, it'll stay. So I suppose I disagree with Chris Cruz, is that as long as it is profitable for the networks, it'll be around.
It's not, though. I mean, they are spending more money than they're getting out of it, I think.
Well, then why is it that just a little less than a year ago the deal went into effect with USA Network and with Fox, with WWE, where they paid the rights fees that are a lot more than what they were paying before. I mean, if they're losing money on it, they could cancel. If the ratings go down badly enough, Fox and USA could cancel at any time, but they're not.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're making money on it, but not making good money. So they keep it around because it's like having a good tenant who pays a low rent. It's just like at least you're getting that money, even though it's guaranteed. It's a guaranteed amount of money, but it's not that high. It's not like football. It's like,
well, so you're saying that the WWE is getting a much better deal than USA Network and Fox, because USA Network and Fox are paying WWE huge rights fees.
I think they're basically breaking even or making a little money on it, but mainly just to keep their ratings levels high for other shows. Just for their own advertising rates generally. They need to have a certain average rating. So the wrestling helps that because it's like a floor, right? I mean, they're not if they just only pull in a million viewers a week is enough just to keep a good floor. Even though reruns of like Law and Order do better than Raw, which is really
that's disturbing.
Anyway, man, so I think I'm going to wrap it up on this one.
Well, we'll see you next week for the greatest Logan show of all time. Was that a pretty good
Thanks
Tony
for coming
Schiavone?
on again, Brent. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Logan.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Pin me, pay me.
I will. Bye. Thanks for listening, everyone.